Opium and Good Neighbors, how Solovyov justifies the current war by rewriting the history of Britain and Europe. In the latest episode of his program, Vladimir Solovyov demonstrates a typical set of late-war propaganda, shifting responsibility for the escalation to the West, demonizing Britain and Europe as eternal pirates, and attempting to present the Russian Empire as the only gentle and just one. This time, all of this is linked to naval attacks in the Black Sea, NATO, and Britain's colonial past. 1. Naval drones and the return of piracy. The starting point of the monologue is the topic of naval drones and attacks in Turkish waters. Solovyov makes several characteristic moves, denies Ukraine's sovereignty. There is no Ukrainian naval drone program, there is only a British program. Shifts responsibility for the attacks from Kyiv to London and NATO as a whole. A NATO country in the economic waters of a NATO country. Declares the events a return to the era of piracy and effectively paints a picture of total anarchy at sea. It is important that in this logic, Russia is left out. It is supposedly not involved, but vaguely hints at the possibility of Somali pirates and shadow structures capable of blocking any maritime transport, from grain to weapons. This is a convenient position. On the one hand, Moscow does not take responsibility for the escalation. On the other, it reserves the right to carry out asymmetrical, anonymous actions, which are presented as an almost natural response to British piracy. This creates a dangerous narrative. Security in the Black Sea is being undermined not by Russian strikes and the blockade of Ukrainian ports, but by certain British-Ukrainian structures provoking chaos in NATO waters. Meanwhile, NATO itself is declared a laughingstock, incapable of protecting its own waters. There's one more small nuance I'd like to point out. Turkey is economically involved. There is no Ukrainian naval drone program. Don't fool yourself. There is a British program, because the British invested in it, the British were seriously involved, the British provide the guidance, the British are handling all the development. This is their direct area of responsibility, as they themselves have repeatedly stated. Or the British are returning to their traditional practice of piracy. There is no such thing as a shadow Russian fleet. It's no coincidence that the Russian foreign minister has repeatedly pointed this out. There is no such legal term. Shadow, non-shadow, make it up however you like. Legally, such a term doesn't exist. The question is, who is insured? With one of the well-known British brokers or with other insurance companies? The sea is completely transparent. The fact that ships sailing under foreign flags, not Russian ones, were attacked, and responsibility was claimed by supposedly Ukrainian, but in fact British Ukrainian, services in the economic waters of a NATO country, Turkey, demonstrates that we are returning to the era of piracy. In fact, in theory, not only would Turkey have to voice a strong protest now, but they also understand that this would lead to the Black Sea ceasing to be a safe zone. There would be problems with the Bosphorus, and there would be problems with the movement of any ship anywhere in space. 2. Britain as a perpetual pirate and the main drug dealer. The next section is historical. Solovyov and the invited guest launch into a long tirade about Great Britain. Britain is history's main drug dealer, having started the Opium Wars and hooked China on drugs. British naval power grows out of Elizabethan piracy. Colonialism is depicted through the Indian famine and the extraction of billions of pounds at the expense of mass deaths. Factual elements, the Opium Wars, the Bengal famine, are used not for an honest discussion of colonialism, but as a tool of current propaganda. The point is simple. If Britain was a morally monstrous empire in the past, its current criticism of Russia and support for Ukraine are automatically delegitimized. Hence the logical leap. London's current actions in support of Kyiv are a continuation of its piratical colonial nature. This eliminates the question of Russia waging an aggressive war against a neighboring country. The focus shifts to the distant historical sins of the former empire. 3. Europe with rabies and geopolitical pseudo-psychology. Solovyova's guest develops the metaphor of Europe with rabies. Europe is described as a sick organism with a 100% fatal outcome. Photophobia and hydrophobia from medical textbooks are transformed into the image of fear of light, which Russia brings. To this is added the idea of envy. Former empires, Britain, the USA, allegedly cannot come to terms with the fact that Russia has not fallen apart and retains its status. A primitive yet emotionally powerful picture is emerging. The West isn't simply mistaken, it's mentally ill, driven by envy and hatred of Russia. This approach is convenient because it frees the Russian side from the need to discuss Europe's rational arguments, sanctions, questions of aggression, violations of international law. Any criticism is automatically dismissed as pathology and geopolitical hysteria. Think, analyze, draw conclusions, and don't be fooled. This was the program Empire of Lies.